welcome into the GenWealth Radio Hour. Hope you're having a great weekend. My name is Scott Inman, a GenWealth financial advisor in our West Little Rock office, and we are ready to dive into our first segment in the radio hour called What's Happening. As you saw, if you're watching on our video screen there, or our video stream just a moment ago, where we take a look at some things making headlines or making waves, if you will, on social media posts. That's we're going to dive into that today. We've got a guy we've been picking on here for a couple of weeks, and we get to do it again today. I'm joined in the co-hosting chair by Alec Darrell, also with us in the West Little Rock office. You picked a good one to come in on today because we're going to hammer a guy a little bit later on, but we've got some good topics too, so good stuff today.
We do.
You ready to dive in?
Let's do it.
All right. Well, without further ado, our first topic. I really liked this one from a Kiplinger article entitled Social Security Basics, 12 Things You Must Know to Maximize Your Benefits. Got a dozen in this article, and this is really good information. I'm going to applaud this one. You know, sometimes we're pretty critical of what we're reviewing, but this one is very good information. Things like finding, a lot of it is very basic. It says Social Security Basics, but a lot of people don't spend the time to really dive into some of these things. But it's things like find your full retirement age. Do you know when your full retirement age is and what that means with regard to your Social Security benefit? How do you become eligible? How are cost of living adjustments figured? What do you know about the earnings limit test? And all of these things are things that we work on when we work on a retirement plan for our clients. But I do think it is eye-opening to people, especially if they haven't spent any time looking into their Social Security benefits, how complicated this thing is. I guess maybe it shouldn't be so eye-opening because it is related to the government, but it is. There's a lot that really needs to be fleshed out so that you can maximize your Social Security income.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Yeah, a lot of people just think, hey, right when I turn 62, I should start claiming Social Security, and because that's the earliest I can do it. But there are a lot of little nuances around it and things that you can do to really maximize. We actually have one of our wholesalers give a Social Security seminar a lot of the times to our clients, and you can make a 1-hour seminar just talking about Social Security because there's so many different nuances to it. So getting educated on it can really make a massive difference over your retirement.
Yeah, I think one of the most common questions we get with regard to Social Security is it even going to be there, right? And we do believe it will be. There is a threat to the trust fund that the surpluses, the surplus monies coming in from Social Security may be depleted, will be depleted if nothing is done legislatively by 2032, 2033, depending on the year of the report. It kind of varies a little bit, but it's coming very soon. But that doesn't mean benefits are going to go away. They might have to be cut by up to 25%, but we do believe something's going to get done to change that. But in a worst case scenario, you're still going to get a benefit. So you are doing yourself a disservice if you just throw it to the side and say, I'm not even going to worry about Social Security. So let's talk about a few things in this article that are valuable. I think finding your full retirement age. I mean, I think a lot of people get this terminology a little confused. It is getting easier to find it because we're getting to the point now that if you haven't claimed Social Security, everybody is pretty much the same full retirement age of 67. If you were born 1960 or later, your full retirement age is 67. But full retirement age, Alec, doesn't mean your full benefit.
No. So you can still delay it past age 67, and every year that you do that, it increases 8%. But you want to take it at the very latest at age 70 because it's not going to be increasing at any point past then. One thing that we often will do is if we have a client that they may want to work part-time past, or I guess after retirement, they want to work part-time, we may delay their Social Security claiming age until age 67 because there are some income limits to where if you're working and you're claiming Social Security, let's say at age 62, the government will actually reduce your benefit. But once you hit age 67, if you're still working, it doesn't matter. You're still going to get your full benefit at that time.
That's right. So you got to watch those earnings. If you are not going to do a full stop prior to your full retirement age, it is probably advisable not to claim Social Security until you do. I think some other things in here that were very valuable were the fact that the cost of living adjustment, how it's figured in the late year 3-month average of the consumer price index, so inflation rate. So it doesn't always keep up with the actual inflation rate. It doesn't, and this is not in the article, this is just from our experience. I think they have already announced, well, this year was 2.8% cost of living adjustment. And when you see inflation tick up during this year higher than that, it is a great example of how your Social Security benefit is not going to keep up with inflation. And then the other thing that was very interesting in here is the taxation of Social Security. A lot of people do not realize, Alec, that more than likely, unless you're living on a very small amount of annual income, your Social Security benefit is going to be partially taxed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not fully taxable. So, and that does depend how much income you're actually taking, whether it is from IRA assets or if it's from other streams of income. But yeah, it's only partially taxable. It's actually a tax efficient income in retirement.
Yep. We don't have a lot of time to flesh out all 12 things in this article, but I would certainly advise anybody watching or listening to go find that article. It's from Kiplinger. And again, just Google Social Security Basics, 12 things you must know to maximize your benefits. Some great education in that article. We're staying with Kiplinger on the second topic on the What's Happening segment today. Is your financial present threatening your financial future? And this article features or focuses on 4 blind spots, 4 potential blind spots that you may be overlooking on your road to hopefully financial independence or retirement. And I think these were some good ones too. The first one we'll drop in on here, Alec. I'm not ready. A lot of people say they're not ready for whatever reason, and I don't need to get serious about a financial plan. When I think or when I hear somebody say I'm not ready, that is typically, not all of the time, but typically associated with that person's age, because I do think, and you can speak to this, right, working with people in your age group and maybe even into their 30s and 40s, when retirement is a timeline that is far, far away. Think of Star Wars here, in a galaxy far, far away. It is hard to really think that you need to get serious about it, but you know from planning with these clients, some moves and some choices they make now can greatly impact their future.
Yeah, when we talk about time in the market and getting started early, I always think of the chart that says if I started investing when I was 20 compared to when I was 30, it's a massive difference by the time you reach age 65. And so, you know, getting started early is the biggest key because it's more time in the market, more compound interest, and it's also easier at my age. Like I don't have kids right now. Yeah. I don't have a lot of liabilities. I'm not sending kids through school, and I have the most time and freest cash flow than I probably will ever have until I'm knocking on the door of retirement.
Right.
So, yeah, go ahead.
So I was just going to say, I think, and there's great opportunities to catch up when you do get the kids out of the house and you are approaching retirement. But those decisions, when it comes to the cash flow you're talking about, how to allocate that, when to save for down payment on a house and when to enter that mortgage, how much mortgage payment, you know, all of those things do matter because it's all about, we've said before on this show, it's all about margin, right? It's the space between your income and your expenses and what you're able to do with that can make all of the difference in your road to true financial independence. I like the second one on this article, the second thing that is a potential blind spot, and it's a new one. Well, part of it's a new one. It's the DIY thing, the do-it-yourself tools, and the belief that that will be enough. And now you throw AI into the mix because the article actually says AI or DIY tools, that they'll be enough to help you. AI is becoming part of the personal finance conversation. There's no question about it. And I do think there are some places that it can help. I know you tinker with it a little bit, looking at how it might help with portfolio management, the investment selection process for somebody, but there are limitations to it.
Yeah. So I use AI all the time, like you mentioned, and I think there's a lot of things that it's very helpful for. But one thing with AI is you've got to be asking it the right questions. Yep. So I could ask it questions about finance and having a financial planner and trying to do that DIY approach. But if I'm not asking the right questions, it's not giving the right answers. And there may be gaps in my financial plan or my lifestyle that it's not telling me, not because it can't find it, but just because I'm not asking for it. And I think that's where the human element really comes in is we can take a real good holistic approach and figure out what are those gaps or things that you're not thinking about.
Yep.
That it just will beat AI or DIY.
That kind of dovetails into the third one. We won't have time for all four, but the third one's really good too. Some people say, I've already finished planning for retirement. We had the opposite end of the spectrum. It's too early to get serious about it. Some people think when they have their plan, and maybe even they've retired, that they're good and they've finished planning. And I think that is a misnomer as well. It doesn't stop when you retire. Retirement is not a stop sign. It is a yield sign when it comes to risk management for sure, but it is all about income. And you think about how we plan here for a client with retirement income. We meet with them annually, and it is a resetting of potential investment strategies, or at least the account values of the buckets that we are using in our bucketing strategy. It may be there are new needs, there are new desires, there are new wants because the market has done well. Recalibrating that income plan has to be a continual basis. It's not a static plan.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It's when we talk about how much money do you need to retire, yes, you need to get to that dollar amount, which is a dollar amount custom to each person.
Yep.
But when they get to that dollar amount, it's not like, all right, you're good, go on, you're retired. We've got to manage their assets. We've got to make sure that if we were to have them retire in a 2008 in a big market crash, we're prepared for that, and we're ready to hedge that risk, and we're also able to send them income for 20, 30, maybe even 40 years if they live for a long time. And that has a lot of management on our end.
A couple of good articles there from Kiplinger. I would highly recommend that. And now we've got this guy on this Instagram reel. We focused on him a couple of weeks ago, and I still don't know a whole lot about him, but I am learning that he's not a big fan of stocks. He's not a big fan of 401ks, and apparently he's not a big fan of financial advisors. Listen.
Babe, why do you think financial advisors are scams?
I have never once met a financial advisor who was financially free. Here's how financial advisors work. There is a small percentage of them that are what are called fiduciaries, which means that they actually legally have to give you the best investment in the best stock portfolio and the best mix that is in your best interest. How most of them are compensated, like 90% plus, they're compensated off of commissions for getting you to do certain products and certain stocks and certain mutual funds that they get a percentage off of. So financial advisors have books, and they get paid percentages off of the books of these businesses. And so I was just like, also, if you notice, a lot of these financial advisors are just like, come straight out of college, and they're like, hey, we want you to go call all the friends, all the people you know, and try to get them to invest with you for stocks. So it's just like, at the end of the day, the financial advisor, I'm like, unless my financial advisors are all business owners with real estate and they are wealthy and they have exited companies for hundreds of millions of dollars, those are the people that advise my finances, not people that are trying to tell you to invest in some mutual fund that they get a percentage off of. Be cautious.
So this guy a couple of weeks ago was talking about a 401k as a lousy scam as well. And I'm learning that I don't know what he wants you to click on at the end of those reels. I'm sure there's something, and I'm sure it has something to do with how he knows how to make bazillions of dollars in the real estate market. But I find it a little laughable or a little bit disingenuous that he's going to attack financial advisors because they actually make money, when he takes all of his advice from business owners and real estate moguls who are very wealthy, who make a lot of money. People don't go into business for free, okay? So I'm gonna say that he is correct. He has never met a financial advisor that was financially free, because if they were, they wouldn't be paying their bills, right? We are in business. We're all in business. But I think where he gets a little sideways with me, or I get a little sideways with him, is when he starts to talk about how everybody's just trying to cram him into high commission investments just to get paid. The fiduciary piece of that he mentioned is true. There really are. I actually looked it up because I was surprised. There aren't really that many financial advisors that are fiduciaries. We are here at GenWealth Financial Advisors, and really what that means is we've pledged to act in the best interest of our clients over our own interest. That does not mean that we can't sell a commission product, because sometimes, and here's where we get sideways in this world of you can't sell commission products, you got to be fee-based, that's the only way to do it. Sometimes it is in that client's best interest to pay a commission. And let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it is. There's there's a whole plethora of investments and products, and we're very fee agnostic. We're not going to base an investment based on the structure of how the commission is, but if there is a piece in your plan where we need to have a product and it just so happens to have a commission, then we'll do that. Now, that would also be something called a buy and hold strategy. If we are paying a commission up front, we want to hold this for a long period of time to where you never pay on it again. One thing that he did mention in the video, he was talking about high commissions, and I really see that a lot with people that they're not fiduciaries and they can't sell that many products. There are a lot of bad actors in the industry, and they only have product A to sell. They can't look at your whole financial plan and say, hey, this is what you really need, and act in that fiduciary capacity. They've got one product, and it doesn't matter if you're 25, 55, 85, you need income, you need growth. That's what they have to sell, and that's what they're going to sell you. So that's something to look out for.
Yeah, you should ask about licenses, right? I mean, if they only have a certain amount of license and can only sell certain products, that's probably not. It's going to be limited. It's going to be limited advice, right? And maybe even erroneous advice. So you do look to that. So he does have a point there, but I think it's always about the broad stroke that happens on these Instagram reels or whatever social media circuit you're on that really aggravate me, because it paints everything with that big stroke. And again, I get it. He's basically telling the world that stocks are horrible and you need to listen to me and get rich in real estate. And we love real estate. I'm not knocking real estate. But if you don't think the stock market has created more wealth for more humans in all of history, then you are lying to yourself. So it is a great vehicle to easily access and to create wealth for yourself over a long period of time. So get a little defensive if anybody's talking about how we don't need to be using stocks. And financial advisors do get paid, but the key question is, are you getting the value you're paying for? And it should be more than just investment management. It should include holistic planning. It should include a lot more than just the investment advice. Okay. Been out of time for a long time now. I've gone over on this segment. Time to get out of that and enter the Get Ready for the Future show. It starts right now.
You've been sold the idea that financial independence is all about some number on your account statement, or even worse, that you don't qualify because of where you started out. That's just not true. It's not about some well-kept secret of the wealthy. It's about finding the right information and knowing how to apply it. On the Get Ready for the Future show, we're answering your questions so you can start making real financial change today. The journey to true financial independence begins right here, and it starts with you.
From the 6th floor of 3 Financial Center in West Little Rock, Arkansas, this is the Get Ready for the Future show, where we help people discover, protect, and share true financial independence. Glad to have you along for the next half hour or so. My name is Scott Inman, and along with me, Alec Darrell, who works with us in the West Little Rock office, as we get set to answer your questions, whatever your questions are about money, about retirement, Social Security, how your retirement income is going to work. We've got some good ones teed up today. If you want to get in on the action, it is easy to do. I want you to write down this number, 501-381-5228. Again, it's 501-381-5228. You can actually send a text to that number, or you can call it and leave a voicemail, and we'll use your question on the air. You ready to get going?
Let's get after it.
All right. Yasmin's first from Little Rock. And she writes, my sister is pressuring our family to put everything into a trust. Is that necessary for everyone? Well, Yasmin, I would say, first of all, you don't need to be pressured to do anything. I'm not sure what the motivation is there for your sister to pressure your family into putting everything in a trust, but you need to take a step back. Probably need to get some counsel from an estate planning attorney to talk about your need for a trust. But trusts are, we can talk about them generally here, that they are powerful tools, but not always the right tool for everybody's estate plan. Some estate plans are simple enough you might not need a trust, but you do need to do some estate planning. So let's talk a little bit about the differences between a will and a trust, because I think people need to understand that. The key differences between a will and a trust are, one, a will will not avoid probate or bypass probate. So if you just have a will, you basically have your instructions of what you want to happen to the things you own after you die. But a judge or a probate court is going to look at that and review that, and it goes through the probate court process, and that can be lengthy. it can be costly, time consuming and costly. So it is not a way to put a lock around all of your assets. The trust does that. It will bypass probate. So if you want a way to avoid probate costs and get the assets to your heirs in a timely manner, the trust is going to trump the will over that. And a lot of times, Alec, when we work with people in the estate planning process, which we do have those services here at GenWealth, we're going to do, I say a lot of times, almost every time probably, we do have a pour-over will involved with that trust. So you're going to get both, okay? But let's talk a little bit about that. That's the general difference and advantage that a trust would give Yasmin and her family over a will. But let's talk about some of the other things that she might need to know about a trust.
Yeah, so it's going to be different for everyone how you set the trust up, and I think it's really important to make sure the trust is set up around your needs. And going and seeing an estate planning attorney is essential to get one set up. And really, when I feel like a trust makes the most sense is when you do have assets or property in multiple states. That'll help you avoid probate. I've seen people who did not have a trust set up and they had their home or vacation home get locked up in probate, and it is an absolute mess. It can take years to get it out, and having a trust can really streamline that process for your kids, your other family members you want to leave assets to. So I would highly recommend getting it set up in that case. As well as if you have minor children, you want to have a trust set up, because if they're minors, they're not able to take ownership and be responsible enough to manage those assets. And, if you've got a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old, you can't leave them your entire estate because they're toddlers. So you would have a trustee come in and they would take care of all that stuff. Really, one of the biggest benefits, and what I think is probably the biggest call to action to get a trust, is if you have a blended family. And you may want to speak a little bit more to having a blended family and why a trust can really benefit y'all in that situation.
Yeah, so we did chose to go through the process of building a new trust. So I have a second marriage. My first wife passed away a few years ago, and we had a trust. So that trust really, I had the choice of leaving that in play because it is a trust that is applicable until the second person dies, the second spouse dies, which would be me. So I could have left that in place. But then when I got married, it's a whole new dynamic, right? You've got assets that you're now combining. You've got more children. My wife has 2 children of her own. I have 4 children. So you have the dynamic of how are you going to spread those assets to those 6 kids. There was life insurance money from my deceased spouse. So I have set that aside for my kids, but then we've discussed how we are going to disperse the rest of it. And that's a difficult process. It's probably one I would even say if you are in a blended family, this, it's an ongoing one, right? Over time, your desires and wishes are probably going to change, but going through that estate planning process is incredibly helpful to try to discuss that. Maybe they're hard conversations, but they need to be talked about, and you can determine how you're going to distribute those assets, maybe in a different way than just splitting them evenly among your children. We ultimately decided that for the assets that will go into our trust, we will distribute them evenly among our 6 children, her 2 and my 4, but we'll just withhold some things from the trust and not go in there for the things that we don't want split evenly. So it's a great process if you have a blended family. Again, not an easy one and an ongoing one, but I think that's a great opportunity to do that. So I don't know what Yasmin's family dynamics are here, but if you have second marriages, blended family, it is incredibly important to go through that estate planning process. Otherwise, if it is pretty straightforward, it may not be necessary. If you've got a married couple, first time married, you've been married a long time, you have no minor children, your kids are adults, you don't have any real concerns about handing over the keys to all of your assets at one time. I think that's a big key here when you talk about, let's take your retirement accounts, for example. Most of the time, your primary beneficiary is going to be your spouse, and then your contingent beneficiaries are going to be your kids. Even if they are adult kids, you may not want to hand over their portion of your $1 million, $2 million, whatever it is, in your retirement accounts all at once, because you may want them to not go blow it, right? So it is for sure when it's a minor child, but even when you're an adult child or have adult children, that's a consideration as well.
Yeah, you may have one kid who, they're going to use this the right way, maybe buy a home, pay off debt. And then you may have another one who he's like, I'm going to have a Lamborghini the second this money gets to me.
Right.
And so that kid, you may want to put a limit on how much they get of your assets each year. And we've seen it to where they will actually set up a schedule of, hey, when we pass away, the trust will give you this much money. And that's kind of a test run. If you lose it, you lose it. But 10 years later, maybe we hope you've gotten more responsible, we'll let you inherit the rest of the money. So that's one really cool way you can set up guardrails in a trust. And another thing to mention is a special needs trust is something that's very important to get set up if you have a child with special needs. And you can set up a lot of parameters and make sure that they're taken care of after you and your spouse were to pass away.
Yeah, a couple final thoughts on this before we go to the next question. If you do choose to not have a trust and you have those IRAs, those 401ks with a beneficiary on them, you are still going to bypass probate. It's going to go directly to the beneficiary. So if you are okay with your adult children receiving it all at once, you don't have to worry about probate if you've got those beneficiary designations. And also, a trust only works if it's funded. We have seen time and time again where people build a trust, but they don't have any beneficiary designation or they don't put anything into the trust to fund it, and it's useless at that point. You have to direct your assets to the trust either while you're living or after you are gone. And we do have, as I kind of alluded to at the first part of this answer, a specialist, an estate planning specialist with us. Her name is Remarried Tudor. And she would certainly love to walk through, Yasmin, your specific situation and help determine whether the trust is the right tool for you and your family. Don't let your sister make this decision for you. Get to an estate planning specialist or an estate planning attorney and walk through that. The typical cost here at GenWealth, that's about $1,500 for the straightforward estate plan. It could go up to $2,500, $3,500 from an estate planning attorney. I would also say, I know we're going a little bit long on this question, but there is more to it than just the trust. The estate planning also includes a healthcare directive and a power of attorney, which are vitally important. People get locked in on the discussion over the trust and the will, but those are really big pieces too. How you want to be, to what extreme do you want to be kept alive? Who do you want making your healthcare decisions if you become incapacitated? And who's going to pay your bills? Who's going to make your financial decisions if you can't? Those are vitally important as well. If you want more free info about retirement, investments, and your money, I want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just search for GenWealth Financial Advisors on YouTube and subscribe for all our latest videos. Our next question on the Get Ready for the Future show is from Kerry, and he wrote in an email question and says, while this topic is not directly related to future planning, potential financial liabilities can have the ability to severely impact a family's financial stability. With that in mind, what advice can you provide regarding limiting and managing these risks? Oof, that is a hornet's nest to open up, Kerry. I'm not exactly sure if you're talking about specific financial liabilities here. There are all kinds, right? But certainly it is true when it comes to planning for the future. You've got to have the margin, as we talked about earlier in our What's Happening segment. You have to have the margin between your income and expenses to be able to make good decisions with investing, with paying off debt, whatever you need to do with that margin. And if you have a risk that can crater that, you have got to make a plan to deal with that. And you say it very well, limit or manage. You can't eliminate it in most cases, but you can limit and manage it. And again, it's very hard to answer this question not knowing exactly what his train of thought is on financial liabilities, but we'll kind of go in it from the insurance perspective and talk a little bit about that. I think the first thing that I would say that comes to mind on limiting liabilities is to have a really robust emergency fund, though. A cash fund that is not invested in the market, that if everything that can go wrong does go wrong in a year's time, you have the ability to either pay for it or get into the insurance company's pocket. And by that, I mean meet all your deductibles, right? And that's the way I look at my emergency fund. I know the General advice is a 3 to 6 month expenses, but I really like to say, hey, if I had to meet every deductible on all of my insurances and needed to replace every appliance, and that can be a pretty big number. You need it to be significant enough for you. We can help you kind of identify that through the planning process, but if you want a general rule of thumb, I'd say you need at least $20,000, $25,000 in cash at all times. That'd be where I'd start. So beyond that, if you got that, great. How else, Alec, would you approach this idea of limiting potential financial liabilities?
Yeah, so the real question I ask is what could go wrong?
Yep.
And I think a lot of people have the life insurance piece covered. If my spouse didn't come home, could I replace their income? And not everyone does, but that's one of the more common ones. And that also carries over to your home and your car. So you have the standard homeowner policy typically has about $100,000 to $300,000 in personal liability coverage. And then on your home, it's typically in that $25,000 to $50,000. I think it's $25,000 per person, and then $50,000 per accident, and then $25,000 in property damage. And that seems kind of low to me.
Yeah.
When I look outside and look at the cars in the parking lot, more than half of them cost $25,000. So if you were to total another car, your insurance could cover $25,000 of their vehicle. But a lot of vehicles are way more expensive today. So a lot of people look at getting additional coverage through things maybe like an umbrella policy.
Yep.
And that will cover, it won't cover your car or your house, but it will cover the other property that does get damaged if you were to be liable for that.
Yeah, Carrie, if you have kids before driving age, and then if you have kids that are driving age, you definitely need an umbrella policy to cover the liability there. I've got a couple of teenagers on the road that are on my policy. Now, eventually, when they become adults, they're going to have their own policy. You get that liability off of you. But when they're 16, 17 years old, if they have an accident and something happens where someone is going to sue, it's going to come to you, and it's going to be after your assets. So an umbrella policy protects that. I think the general coverage is maybe somewhere around $1 million. I think you need a good insurance agent, an independent insurance agent that can shop rates from multiple companies to kind of help you determine how much you need there specifically. But I'm a big proponent of that. Got one myself. The homeowners and the auto liability, it depends on what you have around and outside your home as to what kind of liability you may have there. Do you have a pool? Does it have a fence around it? I mean, all of those things matter. And then Alex already adequately covered the auto liability as well. When you think about the things that can go wrong, I mean, I don't know if you have some outside business activity here, or if you have any kind of 1099 income, but that's another place that we kind of think about when it comes to needing a business entity that protects against some of those things. I mean, again, we don't know your personal situation, but if you have a second home, or if you have any kind of 1099 income that works in a service industry where you deal with people, I think there's a really good likelihood you may need to explore creating an LLC, which is a limited liability corporation. They are extremely easy to set up. You set them up through, I'm assuming you're from Arkansas, you set them up with the Secretary of State's office. You can do most of it online. You pay a small fee to get that created and get it going, and you have some protection there to be able to put any kind of what would be considered a business asset. And that may be auto, that may be a home, that may be some things that can be a business-related expense that gets protected by that LLC. So if somebody, for instance, we have a home that we have in Fayetteville that we use it as an Airbnb, we use it as a rental, and that's in an LLC. I mean, if somebody comes in and rents that house and they fall off of my balcony, and they want to come after me, then I've got that protection because that home is not owned by me specifically. It is owned by the LLC. So I think that's a great thing to consider as well. Assuming, again, that's where your mindset is, Carrie, about the potential financial liabilities in the insurance realm. But certainly there are lots of things that could be considered a liability. And I think at the end of the day, I would say you need to engage in the planning process with a financial advisor. If you'd like to do that here, we can do it for you and do it with you. It's the GenWealth Ready to Retire process, but it includes a lot of things. As you point out in your question, it's not directly related to future planning, but it affects future planning, and it affects your financial future. So walking through that Ready to Retire process, you would get a holistic approach that it would include those things. And you can reach out to us to begin that process if you'd like to book an appointment, 866-653-PLAN. It's 866-653-7526. You can also reach out via email. Just send it to info@getreadyforthefuture.com. And it's the question of the week, Carrie. We like that one. It's a little bit off our normal track. Hopefully we gave you some good information, but we are going to send you a Get Ready for the Future show tumbler for being named the question of the week. We just want you to email us to claim it. Just send that email to show@getreadyforthefuture.com. All right, we've got time for a couple more questions. Eric from Benton writes, I inherited farmland in Arkansas. Should I sell, lease, or hold it for the next generation? All right, Eric, that's a really good question. It's a great opportunity for you to enhance your financial future. We certainly know that there are some opportunities here that are going to exist now and not later. So I think you got to really be prepared to act. And the first piece that we need to talk about is the value of the land, right? So when you think about the value of this farmland in Arkansas, did you inherit it recently? And if you did, you inherited it off of someone else's ownership, then more than likely you are going to receive a step up in cost basis on that land. So in other words, just to make this simple, if let's say this was your grandfather's land and he bought it for $100,000 in the 1950s and now it's worth $2 million. Well, if he were still around and he sold that property, then he would have a $1.9 million capital gain, right? You don't have that. You've got the new cost basis of whatever the value of that farmland was on his date of death. So if it was $2 million and it's $2 million now, you could actually sell that land and not have taxation on it. So there's a great opportunity to act sooner rather than later there, but I don't want you to be in a hurry because this can be an emotional decision. But I certainly think the first part about it is, what is your experience? I think about that, Alec. What's your experience in farmland? I mean, do you really want to try to learn that? That'd be my first question.
Yeah, I don't know. It depends on the person. If it's going to be more of a headache to own it and you don't have no idea what to do with it, then it may make more sense to sell, and you could use that money for something else that still benefits the family. But if you do want to hold on to it, there are a lot of different options. And one thing that I think of is leasing it. So you can actually lease out land for a lot of different reasons. A lot of hunting clubs in Arkansas, they are land that someone owns and they lease to hunters. And so that could generate income. Another one, I have a friend who his hunting land, they lease it out to a cattle rancher. And so they own the land, and the cattle rancher, he comes out and lets his cows roam on it, and that's another stream of income, and it actually doesn't conflict with each other. So you could actually do both at the same time, but there's a lot of different ways to use that land to generate income if you do want to hold on to it, but you're just not sure what you do want to do with it. But really the questions are, am I going to be losing money by leasing this with maintenance and maybe taxes and things like that? And is this going to be too much work for me? If the land is close to you and it's very easy to manage and you have a great way to, use this as an investment or an additional source of income, then it may be a good idea. But if it is 8 hours away or 10 hours away or just a really far drive and it's a pain to get to, then you may not want to lease it or be managing it that entire time.
What's the saying? Land's a great investment because they're not making any more of it, right? And farmland is very valuable, and you could get some good lease from a farmer to just get a paycheck and not really have to have a whole lot of sweat equity into it, if you will. But I think the other piece is I think you need to determine where your liquidity needs lie. I don't know how close you are to retirement, but you can't spend that farmland, right? You can get an income off of it, but you can't spend the value of it. And if you need to sell part of it, maybe, I don't know if that's an option, right? We don't know much about your the amount of farmland you have or how it's pieced up. But if you need some liquidity to create more retirement income for you, then you may need to look at selling that. But if you don't, if you've got if you're in a really good place with your 401k and your other investments, and you know what you're going to get in retirement, and that'd be the next thing I'd ask you. If you don't know what you're going to get, you need to do a plan that tells you what you're going to get. But if that's going to be enough and you don't need any of that any of the proceeds from the sale of that land to add to that retirement income, then it might be a great option to hold that. And it is a multi-generational option as well. I mean, you can pass that on to the next generation. And we didn't even ask that question, but if it's important to your family to keep that in the family, I think that's a big piece to it too. We don't know if there are other owners. Lots of ifs on this one before we could really give you that advice. We hopefully have given you a few things to think about, but it is a great opportunity for you to, as a catalyst, really put that into your or be additive to your track to financial independence. Now, we've only got a couple of more minutes left, but let's go ahead and hit this one from Brenda from Fayetteville. I've recently remarried with adult children from my first marriage. How do I protect them in our estate plan? You know, we talked a little bit about this in our first question today, but as someone who is in a blended family, they certainly need more than just a will. So when you talk about protecting them in your estate plan, I do think there is a very evident need for a trust here, Brenda. You need to walk through what your desires are with the wealth you bring to the table and what your new spouse's desires are with the wealth they bring to the table, how you're going to mix those, and then how are you going to keep them separate? And that is a long discussion. And it may take more than one sitting to really walk through that. And it is fraught. I'm going to be honest with you too. It's fraught with a lot of emotion too, because people can get their feelings hurt when you really start talking honestly about what you want to do with your money. But the other piece to that too, I don't know how old Brenda is, but you know, I was 49. I was 49 when I got remarried. And my wife is a little bit younger than me. So we've got a lot of future wealth building years together. And that's where we kind of arrived at was, we're bringing things separately to the table that we didn't have to do with. But over a long period of time, we're going to continue to make contributions. Our wealth is going to continue to grow, and we are going to have a lot of together wealth. So how do you draw that line? It's very difficult to do, but I think your wishes and talking it over with your spouse is where it starts. And I do think there's going to be a need for a complete estate plan there, which would include a trust. And there are many different options if you work with an estate planning attorney to kind of walk through that. There is something called a Q-tip trust. It's a qualified terminable interest property trust. That's one of the most common tools for blended families. It can hold assets for the surviving spouse's lifetime benefit, with the remainder ultimately passing to your children. So that's an option for you. The spouse receives income and can use the assets during their lifetime, but they cannot redirect the principal to other heirs. So that is a great opportunity. It protects your children's inheritance without leaving your new spouse unsupported. And I think it's also a great time to review beneficiary designations as well. If you are recently remarried, we need to take a look at those and see who are your primary beneficiaries. Sometimes that gets overlooked and the ex-spouse is still the primary beneficiary, or a sibling has become the primary beneficiary. That was one of the things, as we hear the final bell, that was one of the things in my wife's life insurance policy. After she got divorced, she had named her sister as the primary beneficiary, and that kind of was lingering out there for a little bit until we finally caught it, right? And it was like, you still want all the life insurance going to your sister, or is it supposed to go to me? We had to walk through that, right? So lots to do. But I mean, it's a very complicated process. I know we didn't have a lot of time to discuss that, Brenda, but you need to work with an estate planning specialist to get that done. We offer estate planning services and have an in-house estate planning specialist. You can reach out to us today to book your consultation. I've really run in and eaten up your final thoughts time, Alec, but what do you got?
No, you were good. Yeah, I feel like with a lot of the stuff we covered today, it kind of points my final thoughts to making sure that you're, I guess, up to date. Because we talked about estate planning, life insurance, or really just all different liability insurances, as well as beneficiaries. And you may have set it up 10 years ago, but a lot of things have probably changed since then. You may be underinsured, you may be overinsured, maybe your estate plan isn't quite what you want it to be. Maybe you had a kid and he's not even included in it. So I would say make sure everything's up to date. Go to your insurance guy, your estate planning guy, your financial advisor, and just do a pulse check.
Yeah, and I would invite you once again, as my final thought, to walk through the GenWealth Ready to Retire process, which actually incorporates all of these things. It's more than just investments. Call 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526 to book your first appointment. It is free to meet with a GenWealth financial advisor. You can also reach out via email. You can send that to info@getreadyforthefuture.com. Hope you'll do it soon. And that's all the time we have for this week's show. Thanks for being with us. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got something out of it. If you want to get in on the action next week, please give us a call or leave a text at 501-381-5228. We will see you again next week.
The GenWealth financial team is available to you 24/7 at info@getreadyforthefuture.com or call our offices at 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526. You should personally consult a financial advisor before making any investment, and no strategy can assure success. Securities offered through LPL Financial. Member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Independent Advisor Alliance. Independent Advisor Alliance and GenWealth Financial Advisors are separate entities from LPL Financial.